mercy, and peace be unto you from God our Heavenly Father and from our Lord and Jesus Christ.
Amen.
King. Have you ever noticed how the world seems to fall in love with celebrities? Doctors' offices, waiting rooms, and grocery store checkout lines are loaded with magazines that tell the celebrity's story. I want you to use your imagination with me for a minute. I want you to think about celebrities and pick your favorite celebrity. Perhaps a movie star, or an athlete, or an author. Just pick one. And then think about it. How would you react if that celebrity moved into your neighborhood? Some of you might say, this is a big deal, for what? But many would have other thoughts. That news probably would be the buzz not only of the neighborhood, but of the city and maybe the county. It would be a big deal. Now imagine that you're pretty good friends with this neighbor, and this celebrity neighbor of yours is going to make it possible for you to have the same status that he or she has. You will be able to become a star. You will be able to sing that song or shoot that basketball, drive the golf ball, star in the movie, whatever. Now the excitement has gotten personal, hasn't it? This new neighbor is going to become your personal trainer, your personal coach, your mentor. He or she is going to offer you a surefire way of becoming just like them. I would suspect you would be somewhat excited. I would expect that you would have a lot of happiness and a lot of thoughts going to, where is this going to take me? I think it's very unlikely that you won't feel anything. But then again, that's okay, because this is just fantasy, isn't it? We're just using our imagination. So, let's move from fantasy to reality. Just a week ago, we celebrated the anniversary of such an event. The Son of God came into our neighborhood of the world. And He became one with us. And He made it possible for us to become one with Him, like a good neighbor. But we have heard the story so many times that we easily throw the tree out the day after Christmas. Done that before. And start to move on. We easily pack away the Christmas decorations without allowing ourselves to feel much of anything other than nostalgia. Or even relief. Whew. Got through those holidays. Sure glad they're over. So today I want to return to the Christmas is not over. I want to get to Bethlehem. And I want to tell the story one more time before we move out of this holiday and into a new year. In his letter to the Galatians, Paul reminds us of what the implications are for us that Jesus moved into our neighborhood of this planet Earth. Perhaps we might learn a lesson from some of our other relationships that we have. Now, what would happen to a relationship if the criteria for that relationship was the behavior of reward and punishment? I do this because I don't want to be punished. If we only offer a gift because we are seeking a reward, or if we refrain from cheating and lying in the relationship, or if we do not abuse the friend or the partner or be mean to them only because we want to avoid punishment, what kind of a relationship would that be? Not very good. Not very good. Something down deep within us knows the shallowness of such an approach. In Mark's Gospel, we read of a young man who came to Jesus, and he asked him what he must do to experience the kingdom of God. In answering his question, Jesus set him up for the next question by listing the commandments. Well, the young man, he had done that, taken care of that, and but still he was not satisfied. So he responded by saying that he had done those things, and to which Jesus replied, yeah, you're right, but guess what? That isn't enough. There's something else you did not do. And he said to this young man, leave what you have and come follow me. This is where the rubber hits the road. This is where the life of a child of God begins. It begins not with following rules or following laws to avoid punishment or even a guilty conscience. It begins with following Jesus. It begins with us who have been brought into the faith to help him complete the mission of expanding his kingdom. That's why he brought you in. That's what the Christian faith and life is all about. It's not about dying and going to heaven. You already got that, right? You know that. That's a given. Christian faith and the Christian life is about expanding God's kingdom. We cannot live as sons and daughters of God without following the lead of the ultimate Son of God. John tells the same kind of story about a man named Nicodemus, who already had a spark of faith in Jesus, but he wanted more. There is a subtle message in the way John tells the story. He says, the man came at night. He was in the dark in more ways than one. And that man knew he was in the dark. But that was not enough to solve his problem. Moving out of the dark requires three things. Number one, what are we going to do? We got to admit what? That we are in the dark. Second thing we need to do, we must be dissatisfied enough that we are motivated to do more, to seek the light. And the third thing we need to do is to have faith that we can do such a thing. That movement is nothing short of living as sons and daughters of God. So our reflection on the meaning of our relationship with Jesus calls us to a way of life. But it also calls us to so much more. It calls us to gratitude. You know what I mean? Thanksgiving, thankfulness, joy. It calls us to gratitude for what it means to be deemed by God to be heirs of His kingdom. This is not an inheritance of millions of dollars. It's not a free pass to become a clone of a superstar. It is inheritance of the kingdom of God. It's about an invitation to be sisters and brothers of Jesus, sons and daughters of God. And that, my friends, is a marvelous thing. The consequence of that event are more far-reaching than becoming a movie star, a singer, an athlete, or whomever else the world has come to adore. As St. Paul explains it, this is about being sons and daughters of God with all that entails. This is about moving from the status of slaves of a master to that of a child of a loving parent. Even more than that, it is not a question of children by birth, but children by the choice of that loving parent. Be thankful. Be grateful. It is indeed a marvelous thing that God has done through His Son, Jesus the Christ. The Romans had a custom that might help shed a little light on this marvel of this choice. When in the Father's judgment a child was ready, a ceremony was held in which the boy would give up his ball and bat, or the little girl would give up her dolly, to show that he or she was ready to be a responsible heir. The child was then dressed in different clothes to indicate a new status. Although even from birth, such children were destined to become heirs, until the father decided otherwise, they were in some respects on par with slaves. Paul is telling us today that when God sent His Son into our world, God saw fit for us to become the heirs we are destined to be. So from God's perspective, we are no longer little children or slaves. We are sons and daughters with a divine inheritance. So what of our own perspective? we approach God? Do we come as slaves? Do we come as immature children? Or do we come as mature sons and daughters? We're the only ones that can answer that question. And we answer not so much by what we say, because we can do a lot of talking, blow a lot of hot air. But it comes by the way we live in our relationship with our God. And in relationship with the rest of His all-inclusive family. You see, slaves are concerned about rules and perimeters. They give little thought to developing much of a meaningful relationship with the master. They pretty much do the minimal thing. They want to avoid punishment. And they know that if they do this, what they need to do, they will get their 3 meals and they'll have a place to sleep. So in relationship to God, slaves are those who are content with following rules. I know you know what I'm talking about. You don't kill people. You don't steal most of the time. You don't lie very much. They may even go to church because they fear punishment or because it looks right, and I need to do this once in a while in case there is a God. A lot of those kind of people who call themselves Christians. But that is where it stops. We may even hear such slaves proudly proclaim their slave status. They will tell you that they keep the commandments and they do go to church at the appropriate time. Often slaves and little children operate from the same motivation, reward and punishment. Am I going to church because I'm afraid I'll be punished? Or am I doing this for the right reason? There's a individual Harvard psychologist who researched moral development. He found out that although reward and punishment are the motives for younger children, some of us grow into adulthood without ever moving beyond this childish mentality. We simply become adult slaves, doing what we think we need to do. John Shea has written of the only appropriate response for one who realizes the awesomeness of such a truth. It is found in his poem about a 5-year-old girl, and it's entitled Sharon's Christmas Prayer. And some of it goes like this. She was 5 and sure of the facts, and recited them with solemn solemnity, convinced every word was revelation. She said they were so poor that they had only peanut butter and jelly sandwiches to eat. And they went a long way from home without getting lost. The lady rode a donkey. The man walked. And the baby was inside the lady. They had to stay in a stable with an ox and a donkey. But the 3 rich men found them because a star lighted the roof. Shepherds came, and you could pet the sheep, but you couldn't feed them. Then the baby was born. And do you know who he was? Reporter eyes inflated to silver dollars as she said, "The baby was God." And she jumped in the air and she whirled around and she dove into the sofa and buried her head under the cushions. Which is the only proper response to the good news of the incarnation. This Bethlehem story has been a reminder of what it is that God continues to offer us. Paul, in his letter to the Galatians, reminds us of the awesome implications of a story that goes far beyond the confines of a stable or a cave. Now it is up to us to live as sons and daughters of God with at least as much gratitude and awe as the little girl with her head in the cushion. Merry Christmas and a blessed New Year.